Yo, welcome back everybody to my podcast. This is RTM, aka Russell the Muscle, and this is another episode of Muscle Talk. Man, ever since last week happened, I've been excited to come on here and do another episode. Last week's episode got a lot of positive feedback. I appreciate everyone who commented, all the people out there that watched my video. I appreciate it. I know I don't have many fans yet, but I'm hoping to get there someday. So I really thank you for watching my video, all the people that liked it, all the people that follow my Instagram. I very much appreciate it. But let's get right into it. So today I'm going to be discussing the Spider-Man movies from worst to greatest. But let me start off by saying what I'm excited for. I am very much excited for Venom: Let There Be Carnage. I think that movie is going to do fantastic. I think it's going to do better than the first movie. I'll give you my opinion on the first movie a little later on. I also am very excited for Spider-Man No Way Home. I think that's probably the movie I'm most excited for out of all the superhero movies and stuff. I think that movie is going to be fantastic. Plus, the rumors are Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield is supposed to be in the movie, and I'm hoping that that's true because I think that would be amazing. Plus, Matt Murdock could reprise his role as Daredevil in the movie. And, of course, you got J. Jonah Jameson, who's going to be in the movie. J.K. Simmons, again, reprising his role. There's a rumor that Deadpool might be in it, but I don't believe that rumor. That's going to wait. Deadpool will be in the MCU, but not yet. But there's a lot spiraling around with this movie to make it extra exciting. But I'm going to get right into it. This might be a longer video than last week. So let's start talking about them. First, I am going to talk about both of them. The Amazing Spider-Man movies, both of them, terrible. Terrible booking decisions, worst Spider-Man movies ever made. I think that these two movies were terrible, but I do believe that part of that reason is because they were the reboot to the amazing to the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi's films. That's probably why they got a lot of negative feedback, because it was hard to beat Sam Raimi's movies. They were amazing. Well, 2 out of 3 of them were. I just believe there was too much going on. I mean, part 2 was even worse than the first one. I mean, part 2 had too many villains. It had Electro, it had Green Goblin, it had Rhino, and a Spider-Man movie with too many villains that's not from the MCU is just too messy. That's just my opinion. But not to mention Peter Parker. Alright, he's supposed to be nerdy, right? He's supposed to be selfless. He's neither. In this movie, he looks like a punk rock skater, and he becomes Spider-Man out of revenge. And I get it. Uncle Ben died, and I feel bad, but in the actual Spider-Man storyline, he's supposed to become Spider-Man out of guilt for Uncle Ben's death, not because of revenge. So there's a difference. So honestly, these films were not enjoyable to me, and they are just 2 films that I would never ever watch again. Not to mention, of course, Gwen, his girlfriend. He couldn't even save his girlfriend in the end. It was like he let her fall and die. So basically, these 2 movies, terrible booking decisions, terrible writing. They were funny. They had their moments of humor, but overall, terrible plot, terrible villains, and just 2 movies I would never ever watch again. So let me move on. That's all I got to say about these terrible movies. Alright. And yes, I used terrible 3 times because they are absolutely terrible. Next, Spider-Man 3. I know people that enjoy this movie. I don't know how, but that's their opinion, and this is mine. This movie was horrible. It could have been a lot better, but it had way too many plots in one movie. It had so many plots that this movie could have had 3 movies built into this one. I mean, it had the plot with Harry being mad at Peter and wanting to kill Peter because Peter apparently killed his dad. Then it had the plot where Spider-Man gets the symbiote suit, which makes him an asshole and makes him a little stronger. Then you have the plot where he finds out Sandman killed his uncle. So he puts on the symbiote suit and tries to kill Sandman. Then you have the plot where Eddie Brock turned in fake photos of Spider-Man stealing to J.K. Simmons, J. Jonah Jameson. And Peter proves that they're fake, gets him fired, and he just wants to kill Peter. Then you have the plot where he finds out that Peter is Spider-Man as a symbiote is falling on him and he becomes Venom. Then you have the plot where Venom recruits Sandman to help him kill Spider-Man. You have the plot with Mary Jane. She doesn't want to marry Peter because Harry's threatening her. You have the plot where Harry then turns good at the end because he finds out that Peter wasn't really responsible for his dad's death, and he helps Peter take on Sandman and Venom. And then, of course, the plot where Harry dies. It's just such a messy movie. Too many plots. I don't care if Venom's in the movie. People, like, the people who I know that like it are like, oh, Venom's in the movie. They just are obsessed with Venom, so they like this movie because Venom's in the movie. No, this movie is terrible. Absolutely horrible. And you know what? Let me sway away from talking about this movie before I lose my audience because you guys are getting too bored of me talking about this terrible movie. So, moving on. All right. You guys are gonna get pissed at me. And I'm sorry, but I have to be honest. Next movie. This movie is great. Keep in mind, the next 6 movies are fantastic. They're not like the other 3. The other 3 I hated. These next 6 I will watch over and over again. Before you hate me. I don't hate this movie. Number 6, Venom. I loved it. I love the movie. It had its moments. It was funny. It had some funny moments. It had some great scenes. Tom Hardy plays an excellent Venom. And overall, I enjoyed this movie. I did. The plot was great. Here's what I didn't like about it. I think what lowered it on the list for me is that it wasn't rated R. The PG-13 rating just lowered it for me. Some movies deserve to be rated R. Look at Deadpool. It did a great job. I feel like Venom should have been on that level of greatness. It should have been rated R, and I feel like if it was rated R, it would have been higher on my list. It also had some boring moments, but I mean, it was the storyline of Venom. So, like, since it was the first movie, of course it's going to be a little boring. Of course, I'm excited for Venom Let There Be Carnage. I think that movie's going to be great. It's probably going to rank high on this list. We'll see. I'm hoping I'm right. But as far as this movie goes, to me, maybe it would have been higher if it was rated R, and maybe if it was a little less boring. Like I said, it's a great movie overall, and I would watch it over and over again, but there are some flaws with it. I'm sorry. So I hope you understand my reasoning behind it being this low on the list. All right. The next movie I'm going to talk about is Spider-Man Homecoming. This is a great film. Okay, when this movie was coming out, I was a little skeptical. I was worried about him playing Spider-Man, but you know, he ended up doing a phenomenal job. I thought Tom Hardy's Spider-Man was great. This movie shares the story of the superhero world inside of the head of a high schooler. The movie's hilarious. From Spider-Man fighting the so-called Avengers, you know, the robbers in masks in the bank. Captain America, Thor, nice to see you again. That was just a funny moment. to his best friend Ned on the computer, being questioned by the teacher, saying he's watching porn. It was an excellent movie, well written, great villain. Michael Keaton plays an excellent Vulture. I think this movie was excellent, and overall, I give it like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. I would watch this movie over and over and over again, and I really, really enjoyed this movie. Great storyline, great build. This Tom Holland's movies builds to the next one really, really well. But that's what the MCU is all about. So I'm not surprised. And when he debuted in Civil War, I thought he did an excellent job as well. So it's a shame that this movie isn't higher on my list. But personally, I think the next 4 movies were a lot better. So let me move on. All right. So number 4, this is an unpopular opinion as well, because a lot of you have it as number 1 or 2, but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think this movie was great. Don't get me wrong, I would watch it again and again. I think it's one of the best animated films of all time. Miles Morales, I think, is excellent. It tells a story of Miles Morales becoming Spider-Man after the apparent death of Peter Parker. And I think it does tell the story really, really, really well. It has some great scenes, like the amazing moment where it teases the Spider-Man 3 dance scene with Tobey Maguire. And it just overall tells a great story. I think what has it low on my list, and not at the number 1 and 2 spot, is my biased opinion, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this. I personally enjoy live action movies more than animated ones, unless it's of course like The Lion King. But superhero wise, I like the live action movies better. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion, and a lot of people are gonna hate me for that, but I really do enjoy live action better. But this movie is great in the way they tell the origin story of Spider-Man and everything like that. And its humor is phenomenal. And overall, I think this is a great movie. I just enjoy the next 3 a whole lot more. So let me move on to, of course, a Tobey Maguire film, the very first Spider-Man. Oh my gosh, this movie is absolutely fantastic. From excellent villain in the Green Goblin, which, by the way, he of course is going to reprise his role as Green Goblin. William Dafoe was an excellent Green Goblin, and I'm excited to see him in Tom Holland's No Way Home. But overall, this movie had a great plot. It told the story of Spider-Man well, how he got his powers, and it showed the story of Uncle Ben's death really well. I thought overall this movie was excellent, well written, and I gotta appreciate Sam Raimi for giving us this amazing movie. And I really hope the rumors are true and Tobey Maguire goes to the MCU in Tom Holland's No Way Home movie, because I think that would be excellent. Because in my opinion, Tobey Maguire is the best Spider-Man ever, and I know a lot of people share that opinion. But yeah, this movie was great, and for me, it's at my number 3 spot. Unfortunately, it only gets number 3. For a lot of you, you probably have it at number 2 or number 1, but I gotta give the number 2 spot to one of Tom Holland's movies. Shout out to him. I really, really, really enjoyed Far From Home. I thought Far From Home was really well. I think Mysterio is one of the best MCU villains ever. Obviously, he doesn't beat Thanos or Loki for me, but I'll give Mysterio like a top 4, top 5 for MCU villains. I basically thought the villain was really good. I thought, of course, Tom Holland's Spider-Man was great. I thought all the moments were excellent. Mysterio playing as the good guy was a great storyline. And overall, I thought that this movie was funny. It had its great action sequences. It had its great visuals. The moments where Mysterio was fighting Spider-Man was excellent. This is probably the Spider-Man movie that I watched the most. I thought this movie was excellent. But keep in mind, I also enjoy comedy a lot. So this is probably why I have this one above Spider-Man 1, because I thought this movie was hilarious. Tom Holland is a great Spider-Man. He is. And Mysterio played a great villain, which, by the way, I don't think he's dead. I think he's also going to be in No Way Home. That's just my opinion. But overall, excellent movie. And if you haven't seen it yet, watch it. You have to watch it. It was really, really, really good. And I will never, ever, ever forget about this movie, because it is one of my favorite MCU movies. It's probably in like my top 5 or 6 MCU movies. And for those of you who don't know this, I love the MCU. I think every movie, with the exception to Thor: Dark World and Iron Man 3, is great in the MCU. But this movie, by far, one of the best superhero movies ever made, in my opinion. But let's move on to number 1. Now, number 1 is great. It's got to be the best. Like, honestly, if you really think about it, this has got to be the best Spider-Man ever of all time. Like, there's no competition. And that is Shinji Todo. So my uncle sold me him, and he's awesome. I mean, all of his action sequences are really, really cool, and like, he's the best Spider-Man of all time. He's a Japanese Spider-Man, and he's just badass. No, I just thought I had to play a little bit. Of course not. Moving on to the real number 1. Of course, it's Spider-Man 2. For those of you who believed me before, shame on you. Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. Dr. Octopus, fantastic villain. Of course, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, best Spider-Man of all time. This is a great movie, and I could watch this any day of the week. I mean, all the great scenes, whether you have the bank scene where Spider-Man fighting Dr. Octopus in the bank, or the train scene, which is my favorite scene of the whole movie, where they're fighting on top of the train, and then Spider-Man has to stop the train from falling off the rails. Great movie with great moments, and overall, it's hard to compete with this movie. Nobody can say that this movie was bad. This is my all-time favorite movie, with the best Spider-Man villain. In my opinion, Dr. Octopus is my favorite Spider-Man villain. That's the truth. So overall, I might be a little biased, a little bit, but it's hard to compete with this movie, and I believe that this is the most popular Spider-Man movie ever made, because this movie is just excellent, with great moments. It's just such a shame that Spider-Man 3 was such a flop, because Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 was amazing. Like, the way they ruined 3, and they ended up not even having a 4th one, was just a shame. Although, at least it wasn't as bad as the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Look at this, they didn't even get a 3rd one. Yeah, so those are, in my opinion, the best Spider-Man movies. Well, the worst to the best. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And all I got to say is thanks for watching. Now, before I go, I hope you enjoy this of Shinji Todo. My smart-ass uncle decided to send me and say that this is the best Spider-Man of all time. So on that note, peace. I'll see you in the next video.